Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 4040 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 4040. We're so excited to jump into today's episode, but before we do, here's a quick word from one of our sponsors. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of 4040 Shorts from the 4040 Vision podcast. This is our short form format of our regular podcast where we cover a topic in anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. On today's podcast, this is a clip from our Golden State Warriors What If podcast, which was incidentally episode 1 of the 4040 Vision podcast. And in this clip, my co-host Osama and I discuss the what if scenario where Steph Curry gets traded instead of Monta Ellis way back when. So if you recall, Monta Ellis was traded for Andrew Bogut instead of Steph Curry, and at the time, this was a bit of a controversial decision because Steph Curry was dealing with some ankle injuries, and Monta Ellis was a very popular player in the Bay Area because of the We Believe era Warriors. This was a really fascinating look into what could have happened in NBA history had the Warriors traded away the greatest shooter of all time and one of the best players of all time just because of his injury issues.
I think we both share this particular one, but this is actually quite a pivotal moment in Golden State Warriors history, and that's the trifecta, kind of the Steph Curry, Monta Ellis, Andrew Bogut situation, where Monta Ellis is kind of a very popular player on the team, and the Warriors seemingly draft what might be his replacement, and he wasn't really too thrilled about that. He didn't like the idea of playing with Steph. He was very vocal about that and how it didn't seem like they could coexist. So Golden State Warriors brass kind of had to start thinking about how to break this up. What ended up happening was Monta Ellis was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks for center Andrew Bogut, who was the number 1 overall draft pick a couple of years before that and had actually made an All-NBA, third All-NBA. Monta Ellis had never made any All-NBA list. So it was great because the Warriors finally got a big man that was a capable defender. It's something that they had been missing for as long as I remember, maybe dating back to Chris Webber.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who played center, didn't want to, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. A nugget as an honorable mention that I wanted to bring up is what did end up happening is a Curry deal. This is from an excerpt from Ethan Strauss's book, The Victory Machine. It's a good book. A Curry deal was discussed. In process, they got far enough to where they were going to trade Steph to Milwaukee, but they red flagged it and said, no, this dude needs surgery. We're not going to take a guy that needs surgery. So it's possible that by default, they had to trade Monta instead of Steph, and he got that very low contract, 4 years, $44 million. What do you think about this? What are your thoughts? What points did you have?
Yeah, and this is one of those things where at the time it was definitely not as clear and obvious as it is now, right? I mean, now obviously it's funny to even think about this being a question, but at the time you're talking about Steph being the small guard, he's got ankle problems. You're like, is this guy going to have a legit career in the NFL in the NBA? Not even is he going to be a great player. So the Warriors they got their asses saved by default, right? Because he was hurt. Milwaukee got cold feet. So at the time, we didn't really know, how close it was to it being Steph. But like Ethan Strauss, I mean, he revealed it was kind of a bombshell that slid under the radar in that book because it was mostly about KD. But the fact that they actually moved Monta instead was not, it wasn't like a decision they made. They kind of lucked out. So, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but like, what do you, I mean, other than the obvious, what is some of the, the domino effect of this decision to keep Steph and send Monta out?
Yeah, like we were saying, Monta was popular. He was part of that We Believe squad. He was an exciting player. He was a pretty good shooter. And Curry, I actually remember wanting Jordan Hill at the time when that Steph Curry draft.
It was a different NBA, man. Different NBA.
Yeah. I remember like wanting a guy a big who played well in college, and I was like, Jordan Hill would be cool. And they drafted Steph, so we'll see how this goes. The domino effect is, gambling on Steph Curry. Monta Ellis goes, and he's had an okay career in Milwaukee. I think they made the playoffs once or twice, and they lost to Miami. I think was that when Brandon Jennings said that they were going to whoop the Heat, I think, right?
Bucks in 6. That was the famous meme. Yeah.
Yeah, Bucks in 6. But that's the last I remember of Monta. He might have made another bounce or two around the league after Milwaukee. I don't remember.
Yeah, he was on Dallas for a couple years, Indy for a couple years. But, he was nothing close to, obviously, what Steph is or what he even was when he was with the Warriors. So,
yeah, it just became this gamble on this guy with glass ankles, and he had surgery, and he just dedicated himself to getting stronger. And he didn't really have concerning ankle injuries after that. That was like a reputation he had. But I remember being at a playoff game against Denver in 2013 where he hurt his ankle in a game, but he did play the rest of the series. He played in every playoff series except when he got hurt a few years ago, and that was actually a significant injury. But the ankles haven't been that kind of problem again, so it ended up being possibly a risky gamble that turned into one of the most impactful players in the history of the league.
Yeah, so we got to credit Steph's glass ankles at the time for this decision, and then of course for being able to afford KD several years later. So this was like a major butterfly effect. And the thing is, what's like I said, aside from the obvious of Curry becoming top 10 all-time player, maybe better, more as his career goes on, just the future of the Warriors as a franchise, like this was that crux point, right? And the irony of it all is that it had very little to do with their own, front office and their own decision making. They kind of backed into this because Milwaukee got scared. And you imagine a team that has Monta Ellis, that's pretty injury prone, smaller guard than Steph even, and then you have Andrew Bogut, another injury prone guy, and those are your two main players. You're fading back into obscurity very quickly after that, and there's no dynasty, obviously. There's no anything after that moment. So I think this is a pretty clear number one, and I'm glad we agree on that one.
Yeah, 100%. There's some honorable mentions that kind of coexist with it, but we can cover those later.
We hope you enjoyed that what if, which is honestly one of my favorite what ifs in recent NBA history. And of course, as a hardcore Warriors fan, that one hits especially close to home because, as we said during the discussion, there is no Warriors dynasty without Steph Curry, and maybe there's a Milwaukee Bucks dynasty if Steph Curry is the one that's traded up to Milwaukee. We could see him pairing with Giannis and making one of the best duos in NBA history, but who knows if Giannis would have ended up in Milwaukee if Steph Curry had been traded there. But as you know, we love these fascinating what ifs, and we love deep diving into them, and we hope you guys enjoyed that. Please make sure to like and follow and subscribe to the 4040 Vision podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to leave us a review. You can also find us on most of the social media platforms at 4040 Vision Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, etc. Peace out, y'all. Thanks for listening.